This is a serger machine. It is used to make the serge seams that you see on commercial clothing. It uses 4 threads versus the normal 2, each with their own tension. It has 2 needles which are threaded with the first 2 threads, the back 2 threads being for the bottom of the machine. It also has 2 blades that are meant to cut the edge of the fabric while you sew, but mine is broken. A serger is only really used for the edge of fabric and is a great addition for anyone who makes clothing that likes the professional finished look. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys how to gather fabric for skirts or ruffles. First, increase your stitch length or use a basting stitch. Next, you're going to sew along the edge of the fabric, making sure to keep a straight line. Then all you're going to do is you're going to take the bobbin thread or the bottom thread and simply pull, gathering the fabric along that thread. Do this slowly so you don't snap it. And that's all that there is to it. You can do loose gathers or tight ones, just make sure you keep them even. Alright, I want to show you guys how to use clothes that you already have as a pattern to make a new one. First, place the item you're going to use folded in half on a folded piece of fabric. I suggest using something oversized or boxy for the first few times instead of form-fitting. Cut around the shape of the fabric for both the front and the back, making sure to leave room for a seam allowance. For the sleeve, I like to place the body of the shirt on to cut the arm inseam. This way it ends up becoming the same length. From there, cut the remaining shape of the sleeve. It should look something similar to this. Pin all the pieces together, making sure to trim away any excess, and stitch it up. For the sleeve, stitch the sleeve together first, and then turning it right side out, match the seam of the sleeve up with the armpit seam of the body of the shirt, and then stitch around the edge of the sleeve. Do that for both sleeves. It's hard to explain all of this in a 1-minute video, but I hope that this makes enough sense for you to try it yourself. Alright, so the number 1 question I keep getting asked is what machines I recommend for beginners. And honestly, what I recommend doing is going online and checking out reviews and checking out the different features on different machines. This way you can kind of compile a checklist of things you want on your machine that you can look at when you're shopping. Next, the top 3 sewing machine brands are Singer, Janome, and Brother. If you get any of those machines, you're pretty much in the safe zone. And lastly, I do not think if you are a beginner that you should be buying a used machine unless you are buying it from a dealer or you have someone there that can test the machine and verify that it's working for you. And here are just some moderately priced machines from Singer and Brother. Janome is just a little bit more expensive, so I didn't include them. So I finally caved and bought some fabric instead of just using what I had. It is this beautiful blue seersucker fabric that was begging to be made into a flowy, dare I say, cottagecore type dress. I kept the bodice pretty simple, instead focusing more on the skirt, which I actually didn't end up filming any of, but it is a gathered, ruffly, kind of tiered look that you'll see later on. I then had to make a placket, which are the overlapping flaps on like a men's shirt where you put the buttons and the buttonholes. This is actually my first inset placket, so I was pretty proud of it. I then added the buttonholes and the buttons, and here is the final product. I intentionally made this dress a little too big because I was going for a slightly oversized look, but I'm a little concerned that it looks more like it just doesn't fit, so I'm considering taking in the bodice. Let me know what you think. Quick tip for beginners or anyone that is struggling to sew straight lines. Practice on paper. You can draw lines both straight and curved and practice stitching on them. It's a great way to practice your skill without wasting any fabric. Heck, it can even be good for non-beginners because it's a nice little test of your skill. You can see here I did not do the best on stitching on the curve. Another tip is to slow down. You don't need to push the pedal all the way down when sewing. The less pressure, slower speed. If you're struggling with this, you can wrap the cord around the back. It acts as a barrier and forces you to slow down. I want to show you guys how to use a twin needle in your machine. It's actually a lot easier than it seems. Install the needle like you normally would, and thread the machine like you normally would, first threading the left needle. Add a second spool, thread it the exact same way, this time threading the right needle. If you don't have room for 2 spools, you can use a bobbin at the end of your main spool. Set your machine to a straight middle stitch, and sew like normal. You can even backstitch like normal. Twin needles are great for stretch or woven fabrics, and a great way to add a cover stitch look to a finished garment. I want to talk to you guys about cleaning your machine. After every use, you should wipe down your machine, making sure to keep it free of any dust or lint. Pick loose any caught threads, especially around moving parts like the bobbin winder. Change your needle regularly, even if it's not broken. Use a small brush to clean the feed dogs, around the needle area, and inside the bobbin casing. About once a month, more or less, depending on use, you will want to remove the needle plate and clean underneath. I'm not going to lie, I've neglected my machine for a few months, so it was gross in there. I like to use a vacuum instead of compressed air because it sucks the lint up versus pushing it deeper into the machine. I will then take the cleaning brush again and dislodge any caught dust and pick it out using tweezers, being careful to only pick lint. Cleaning your machine regularly will get it to work better and last longer. You're having issues with your machine? Let's troubleshoot. First step is to always check the threading. Even if you are positive that you threaded it correctly, unthread it and thread it again. Next up, the bobbins. Are they threaded correctly? Are you using the right bobbin for your machine? Is it wound correctly? Evenly? Is that little tail sticking out of the top hole? Are you using the same thread in your bobbin as you are in your top thread? Is the thread appropriate for the project you're working on? When's the last time you changed your needles? They should be changed regularly, even if they don't break. And if you're still having issues, it might be time to clean your machine and/or get it serviced. Machines should be serviced by a professional every 3 to 5 years. Let's talk automatic buttonholes. This is a foot attachment that goes where your presser foot goes. It has a slot in the back that you put the buttons you're using in so that it can adequately make the right-sized hole for your button. First, you will need to select your buttonhole stitch and pull down your buttonhole lever. Make sure it's all the way down. Position your fabric so that the foot is where you want the bottom of your hole to be, and then push the pedal. Make sure the fabric stays straight, but other than that, don't try and lead the fabric at all. It will do all of the work itself. The buttonhole will look like this when done. And to cut the slot in the middle, just take your seam ripper and very, very carefully slice through the fabric. Alright guys, so I want to talk to you about the difference between ironing and pressing, and why pressing is so important when it comes to sewing. Obviously, this is an iron, and the act of ironing is moving an iron back and forth along fabric to take out the wrinkles. Pressing, however, is when you take the iron and you place it on a specific area on the fabric, in this case, the center seam of a quilt block, and you leave it there with a little bit of pressure so that you can permanently manipulate the fabric to stay how you want it to stay. Pressing seams after you sew them allows you to achieve a more professional, crisp look and affects the overall outcome of your project. You can see here I ironed these 2 short seams down flat before doing the long seam in the middle. Because I did this, the finished seam came out flat without any major bumps or wrinkles. Not only does pressing seams allow for a better looking final result, some suggest that pressing can actually improve longevity of your project. I keep getting questions about it, so here it goes. Here's how to wind your bobbins. Most modern machines have an automatic bobbin winder built in. If your machine does not, there is a tool you can buy. Thread your machine by going through the hook, around the latch, and around the bobbin threading tension disc. Then thread your bobbin through one of these holes, leaving a long enough tail to hold onto. Place the bobbin onto the bobbin winder and snap it into place. Now, still holding the thread, you press the pedal and the bobbin should start winding. Once the bobbin has wound for a bit, you can cut the tail off so you don't have to keep holding it and it doesn't get tangled. Some machines, the bobbin will automatically stop when filled, others you do need to keep an eye on it. There should be a guide on the side to indicate when to stop. I know this might seem like common knowledge to some people, but remember, we all start somewhere, so please be nice. In an earlier video, I asked you guys about this crocheted floral dress, and a majority of you guys said to detach the top from the skirt and use the skirt for something else. I couldn't decide what to do with it, so I used some of the fabric to make this cute little drapey crop top tank top. It was actually really easy to make. And if you guys are interested, I can actually do a multi-part tutorial on how to make it exactly. Mine is a little bit more difficult because to save fabric, I did the back in 2 pieces. But once you stitch everything together, the only hemming you have to do is on the bottom portion of the dress. I actually used one of my new presser feet, which is a rolled hem foot. You can see I was struggling to use it a bit. Hi, Diesel. I then added these straps. I then did these straps and stitched those into place on both the front and the back. And here is the final product. It's not washed yet, so the seams are a little stiff.